Alii and hello, I'm your host Erythrina Ngirgalaw, and welcome back to another episode of the Oceanic Podcast, a project produced by UC Berkeley's Critical Pacific Island Studies Collective, also otherwise known as CPISC. Today I'm here with one of my members. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Sophia Perez. I'm one of the co-founders of CPISC, and just super excited to sit in on this conversation.
Thank you. And today I am beyond excited to say that I was given the honor of interviewing Palau's former president, Alii Remengesau Jr. Having been one of the forefront advocates for the youth in Palau, Alii Remengesau Jr. was elected to the Palau National Congress, also known as Olbilakululau, as the youngest senator in the nation's history at the age of 28. Since then, he has served 2 terms as vice president of Palau and a distinguishable 4 terms as the president of Palau. Former President Alii Remengesau strives to develop Palau as a country through the promotion of tourism, as of course, Palau is indeed a paradise after all, and through furthermore encouraging youth presence in the building of Palau's future. Additionally, Alii Remengesau Jr. remains an active advocate for the environment, as a leader among the Pacific nations and on the global scale in advocating for ocean health and conservation, as well as global warming and its effects in the Pacific region. So, former President Alii Remengesau Jr., I would like to once again thank you for giving us this opportunity to interview you and furthermore humbly welcome you to our podcast.
Well, thank you, Ali, and thank you, Miss Trina Koshiba, and you. And really, it's an excitement for me to appear on this podcast, especially when it has something to do with the ocean and
yes,
and our islands in the Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for what you're doing. I do believe that in a small way you're preaching and getting the message out there to your listeners that in the Pacific we are not separated by waters, but we are indeed connected by the waters.
Yes. Sulang. Yes. So, I wanted to come on here, and today we wanted to talk about tradition and cultural values and customs and how they tie into leading Palau in terms of, like climate change and like climate policies and just like different policies that were formed like during your presidency. And so the first question I wanted to ask you was, how would you personally define like Palauan culture, and what role has it played in shaping the nation's identity?
Thank you. Well, Palauan culture, the immediate word that comes to mind is families. Families, extended family, relatives, clan, community. All that defines what our culture is all about. And again, this culture is prevalent or spread throughout the Pacific. But in Palau, as you know, we live and practice and die with it. I say families because the expectation is that you're not just born into a family, you're born into the village.
Yes.
And so that word, the phrase that says it takes a village to raise a child, that is so true to the Palauan culture. No one is left behind.
Yes.
It's the job of the immediate family, the uncles, the aunties, the community to also discipline as well as to teach the child in his learning and growing up and even adult life. So that's really the essence of our culture, looking out for one another and making sure that, again, no one is left behind.
Yes. So thank you for that. And I noticed that you mentioned clans in the definition of Palauan culture. I wanted to ask, could you briefly elaborate on our importance of clans and how the older women impact how the rest of the clan operates?
So yes, the clan is really your family lineage, and you trace it to your grandparents, the family tree of your uncles and aunties, your father and your mother's side of the lineage, and you're basically a member of those clan or families, a group of families. As you know, in our culture, the women are the maternal side of is the strong side of the clan. They pick and select who becomes the chief of the clan, and also Palauan women are known to control the purse, so to speak. So they decide what what the spending priorities of the earnings are going to be, whether traditional money or in this day, as you know, the dollars, where the dollar goes. But it comes from the strong belief that the mother is really the holder of the family, and together with the father plays an important role in the community.
Yes. So can you speak about the influence of, these Palauan traditions on perhaps your leadership and the decision-making process during your presidency? Like, did these chiefs ever affect your decisions moving forward?
Definitely. And for me, I've always been guided by my life's motto, which is you preserve the best and you improve the rest.
Yes.
And that really says it all, because we were born into a Palauan society that is very fortunate to have a pristine paradise environment, the culture and the traditional values that comes along with about 20,000 inhabitants of the islands. And so you do have some responsibility to preserve what you are blessed with, but then develop or improve the lives of the people in whatever you can do. But it has to be a balance of what you do, and this is the guiding principle of myself. And I know leaders who aspire to become the head of the governments also have to take into consideration the fact that the government is there to serve the people and make sure the welfare of the people is well taken care of.
Yes. Thank you. And so, in your view, I would like to ask you, how have Palauan traditions and cultural views evolved or grown over time in response to these, external influences? Because I know you mentioned balance. And so how do you think you strive to find that balance? How have these traditions and these cultural values evolved in response to external influences like globalization and foreign relations?
It's a very good analysis of global or foreign influence on our culture and our traditions, and really democracy versus culture society based on lineage is a very you could say opposing views.
Yes,
because you are born into a chief system, but democracy has individual rights. So that there are times where they seem to clash, because, for example, the freedom of speech is a democratic principle right, but in our culture you have to temper, or you have to speak with respect to your elders. So it's not necessarily a freedom of speech to the maximum. In a culture and Palauan society, respect is everything, a part of what you do. So when you speak to elder, even if you disagree with them, there has to be a level of respect.
Yes.
Of course, in a democratic society, you're free to express yourself. You can shout, you can, cuss or whatever, but that would be really against the value of the respectful Palauan society in the true sense of the word. So you see this kind of clash nowadays.
Yes.
I also want to share that in the true Palauan culture, the power or the influence of money is really not as so great as it is in a Western society where you have to have money to survive. Otherwise, you're left in the street.
Yeah.
In our culture, in the Palauan culture, even though you're penniless, even though you cannot support yourself, your family, your extended family will come to your rescue.
Yes.
So this is the main difference, and I see three things that has to be there in order to balance culture, values, and democratic principles. And those three things is one, respect; two, respect; three, respect.
Yes.
You cannot
Exactly.
overvalue or undervalue the need for respect to be present in a society that is facing globalization versus the retainment of our cultural values.
Yeah. And I would like to say, I think we see sort of the shift of that narrative when you observe like kids my age or my generation or perhaps the youth, when they're exposed to like social media and these like Western trends and Western ideas where you can just like freely express yourself any way you want to, like with no regards to like your elderlies or the people who are older than you. But I find that really interesting. I just think, with globalization, social media plays a really important part in how kids perceive the world around them. And so I wanted to ask you, what do you think, like, what are your thoughts on social media and how kids utilize social media nowadays?
I truly have mixed opinion on the influence and the impact or the effects of the media. Because what is the true one of the true values of our cultural society is that there has to be a lot of human interaction.
Yes.
Communication, discussions, passing on the skills to the next generation by showing them hands-on what to do, taking them out fishing, taking them out farming,
Yes.
taking them out to the picnic, showing them how to do things. But nowadays, the media is people are so individualistic. You can be glued to your media, and so the media mediums these days,
Yes.
it makes you so dependent on an instrument that has no human interaction to it. You learn a lot from what's in the social media, but at the same time, you lack the human interaction or the social interactions that is very much needed, in today's civilization. So
Yes.
I kind of have mixed feelings. I should say the importance of social media now is very, very informative. So people learn a lot and you share a lot. But then at the same time, as we know, there's fake things, there are bad things, there are bad influence, there are things that you would not show to your children or teach your children. So again, I just think more human interaction is needed these days.
Yes. Thank you for that. So shifting to these more, modern challenges, I'd like to ask, during your presidency, how were you able to, integrate these rather traditional customs and values into solving these modern challenges? And would you say we're able to see these customs and values influence the formulation of policies, at least in the context of during your presidency?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think for me, I always had to remind myself that you're a public servant first and a president in office second. It's not really about the title; it's about the results of what you do.
Yes.
That really was conveyed to me, and I like to share a lesson or a saying that my father always said to me, and he said, son, when you die someday, people should not come to your grave and step on it and not give you the respect that we need to give all the departed people. In other words, if you make people so mad at you, even though you're dead, they still, and they come to your grave, they may not give you respect, and they step on your grave, literally step on your grave or spit on your grave. So there's a Palauan saying to that effect. It said, be good in life so that when you die, people will respect you, even though you're done, you're dead.
Mm-mm.
So that is the guiding principle. And in Palau culture, when you become a chief or you become a president, you actually expected to make sacrifices. Sacrifices your quality time with your family, sacrifices in your personal resources, sacrifices in avoiding conflicts of interest. Because the one of the principle of Palauan leadership is that you become a chief, or you become president or a head of a family, you're expected not to be rich, but to be actually spend your resources. There's a Palauan saying that the chief pays for the fines, the chief pays for the penalties incurred by the people in the clan. And the chief is expected to feed the clan. The chief is expected to look out for the best interest of the clan. So the same type of feeling and commitment should be when you become president. It should be the guiding principle that you came into the office with what you have, and you go out of the office with even less than what you brought in.
Yes, thank you. And I'd like to pay my my respect and my gratitude for that, for always prioritizing, as you call it, being a servant to the people before claiming the title of presidency. I think that's what it's all about. Just trying to take on a position of power for the sake of contributing to your community. You know what I mean? I think that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so I also want to ask, given your position of leadership in the context of climate change and economic development, with tourism, how did you balance these challenges, and how did you manage to preserve Palauan traditions?
Well, again, I had to always remind myself that, first of all, there's 20,000 people that you should look out after their interest. Palau is small.
Yes.
It's small land-based. Actually, we're a large ocean state, but a small island state. We have limited resources in terms of industries. So it makes sense to protect the mother goose that lays the golden egg, and that's the environment. So the environment is why the people come to Palau. They don't come because of our hotels or our restaurants or our food, because you can find this everywhere around the world. But what differentiates us from the rest of the world is that we do have a unique and very pristine environment that people would like to come and enjoy. And so you do the things that balances development and exploitation, development and the right amount of harvesting. In other words, you do have to have conservation and not just harvest. In other words, you do have to limit, in a way, the number of tourists that come in, because you don't want more tourists than the schools of fish that people come to see. You don't want the reef to be so crowded and so full of people that destruction becomes an aftermath. So all of these, you have to balance what is it that can keep the economy going, while at the same time, preserving why people are coming in the first place. And that was the main challenge we did. And we had to always remind ourselves that it's not all about money. It's also about the self-sufficiency of people. How can we preserve the marine resources that our people depend so much on for fish livelihood? So that even in Palau, even if you don't have a job, you have a normal and quality life, because you can harvest from the ocean and you can or harvest from the land and actually be a lot more healthy than what money can buy from the stores these days.
Yes.
It's always a challenge for any president, but I think I took that as my mandated responsibility.
Yes.
Because the people, any leader, and every Palauan should not always think about themselves, but the future of the next generation and their children to come.
Yes.
Mr. President, I wanted to ask you a quick question about that, because when I was living on Saipan, people always talked about Palau with so much respect, and really a lot of that came from seeing how Palau, like how the leadership formulates that balance. And one of the things that they told us about people that had been to Palau was that when you go there, you have to sign this pledge about how you treat the environment. I wanted to ask you about if you could speak a little bit about the pledge and how it started, and that happened under your presidency, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd love to hear the mentality behind that.
Yeah. There's a saying that sometimes there's wisdom in the very simple things that you take for granted. Or there are lessons learned from the very simple things that you do. And this Palau Pledge is simply a stamped promise or a stamped pledge in your passport with a line that you have to sign. And basically you signing on and promising that you will not do anything to harm the environment or leave a footprint in the sand that is not in the best interest of the environment and the future children of Palau, basically. And so every tourist that comes to Palau said, what am I signing? I never signed anything in my passport in my life, and I've traveled to any place in the world. You sign a custom form or something, but not something, a pledge, a promise. What am I signing myself? But then they read it and they said, okay, I have no problem with this. I'll do my best to also safeguard the future of the Palauan children. And they sign on to it. And they go back and they talk about it. And that's also another promotion, advertisement for Palau. So, yeah, it's a simple idea that I want to also give credit to the First Lady and Friends of the Marine Sanctuary, a bunch of young men and women in Palau who also worked on this to get the technical support and work needed. But once we approved it and made it a policy of the land for every visitor to sign on to, we've had a lot of good response from it. By the way, there's a Aloha Pledge right now. There's a Caribbean Pledge right now. There's a Samoan Pledge right now. And so this idea is catching around the world. But if I may, I'd like to also add, beside the pledge, one of the important undertaking or something that happened that took the whole of Palau to agree on was the establishment of the Palau National Marine Sanctuary. When I say the whole of Palau agreed to, I mean it was all the state governments, all the traditional leaders of Palau, all the fishermen, the grassroots, the people of Palau who signed the petition and the pledge to set aside 80% of our ocean as a marine protected area, a no-take zone, no fishing, no extraction, no nothing. And so it became one of the largest ocean preserved area in the world. Some oceans, unfortunately, they designate it as a protected area, but then they allow some kind of so-called manageable fishing inside. But the reality is that it's very hard to enforce or manage any commercial fishing activity inside any area. So the no-take zone, the completely no-take zone in our Palau National Marine Sanctuary has been a very good contributor to the effects and impacts of climate change. It has been a good contributor to marine research. In fact, if I may add, recently some research vessels from NOAA, from the U.S. Oceanic Agency, came to Palau and did some deep water research and analysis. And the Palauan waters are now the habitat of many species that we did not believe were so-called residential species. We thought they would just pass on, like whales and dorcas, but now we know they've made Palau their home, so to speak. And I'd like to add also a side impact or a side effect of having this marine sanctuary is the spillover. So the fish is spilling over from the 80% to the 20% that we allow fishing into. Remember, there's no wall on the 80%. So the fish are relaxed, they produce, and then they come near shore where our local fishermen now can have access to more fish, bigger fish, more schools, and definitely a more sustainable livelihood for our people and generations to come. So, and finally I mentioned that I think because of these environmental policies, it's the reasons why people come to Palau. Because they understand and support what we do, and they want to come to see what it is or why we find the need to protect it.
Yes.
And when they come, they're happy. And all visitors who come to Palau, there's the $100 in their ticket that actually goes to, we call it Pristine Paradise Environmental Fund, PPEF. And that money from the Visitors Authority goes to support the Palau National Marine Sanctuary and the efforts of the state governments to enforce and monitor and really protect it for the next generations to come. So thank you for bringing that up. And I know I spoke a little bit more about those two things, but this is the heart of what we call in Palau Bul, B-U-L. That's the Palauan word for preservation. Preservation with a very deep meaning of preserving, because we have to think of tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay.
I love that. Love that. So I also wanted to ask, we just talked about conservation, ocean health, ocean preservation, and in the context of like climate change. So during your presidency, I want to ask, what do you think were Palau's strengths, or was Palau's strength? And what areas do you think needed to be focused on for the most improvement?
The strength of Palau was really, again, the environment.
Yes.
The challenge was in how much do we develop the environment.
Yes.
And that's where the balancing act comes into debate or comes into discussion. Some people obviously want sky is the limit, and some people want more conservation. And so we have to find what works well for helping the people, while at the same time making sure that it's not just helping this generation, but conserving it for the next generations to also enjoy. And again, this is why we did the Palau National Marine Sanctuary. This is why we believe there should not be any deep sea mining in Palau's waters. This is why we believe we should have a shark sanctuary. People get mad sometimes when I say tourists come to Palau not to see our faces, but to see a shark. But in a way, that is so true.
Exactly.
If you can be honest enough to say, okay, I know I look better than a shark, but the reason why tourists come is they have to see a shark. If they don't see a shark, it was not a successful trip. But anyway, those are going to be the ongoing challenges and issues for Palau yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Yes.
How do we keep Palau good for us and for generations to come?
Yes.
How do we preserve the best and how do we improve the rest?
Yes. No, I wanted to bring something up because I find that so funny that we just randomly started talking about like sharks. Of course, not quite randomly, but it's sharks in specific because every time I introduce Palau to my friends, I'm like, I show them a picture of Milky Way or video of Milky Way that I took myself, and I'm like, this is what we go to. And then they're like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, there might be crocodiles there, but don't worry, they won't bite. And they're like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, we live in peace and harmony with the crocodiles and the sharks. The sharks don't bite either. And they're like, huh? I'm like, yeah, we have like this little place where it's like called Shark City. You can go and swim with the sharks if you really want to. Like the sharks won't bite you. And they're so intrigued every time I bring it up. So to talk about, the conservation of the environment and then bring up sharks, I just find it so ironic and also just like just a full circle moment. Because when I talk about Palau to my friends, the simplest way I put it is it's paradise. Like there's nothing like it. You just need to come visit it for you to understand what I'm talking about.
Well, I like your statement on the crocodile. It seems like our crocodiles are toothless because they don't bite people.
Exactly.
But then the other thing that I like to always assure our visitors and our friends when they come to Palau and they worry about the sharks, they say, "Oh my God, sir." They say there's a lot of sharks. I said, "Oh, the best thing about our sharks is they're vegetarians.
They're on a strict diet."
They don't like meat.
I swear, no. It's just, it's growing up with it. Coming here, it's so interesting when people are so hesitant around animals, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, it's an animal. And they're like, you have to be careful. They're vicious here. I'm like, oh, really? They're not where I'm from.
Yeah.
But I think coming out here has just made me really grateful about the fact that I was able to, be raised around a community and around an environment that had such things, where like the environment was prioritized. So I thank my mom for that. She brought me back to Palau for that very reason,
And I'm very happy you have brought out that point because one of the thing in Palau is that you tend to take everything for granted.
Yes, I agree.
Until you away from Palau and then you see, hey, if I were in Palau, I would be doing this. If I were in Palau, I don't have this. So it's sad, but in a way, I'm hoping if every Palauan would have a chance to go outside of Palau and maybe they can better understand what it is that they have back home, that they should be very grateful, they should be very thankful, they should be very proud and protective of. Because if anything, our fault is that we don't fully appreciate and we take for granted what we have here.
Yes.
Until you realize otherwise.
Yes. And I'm not proud to say that I'm one of those people who were more skeptical about staying in Palau until I left Palau. And I was like, hi, where's the ocean? I was like, what is this ocean? Why is it brown? I was like, where's the ocean and why is it so cold? No, but like I'm not proud to say that I was one of those people who always dreamed about like leaving Palau, or not dreamed about it, more like just thought about it a lot. And I focused on it to the point where when I came here, I was very focused on school and everything. But in the back of my mind, I was like, wow, I never realized how much I took for granted in Palau. Palau really is paradise when you think about it. And nobody knows when you're in it.
So again, you mentioned that. So I always remember what I normally say to Palauans outside of Palau. I say, you can take a Palauan out of Palau, but you cannot take Palau out of the Palauan.
Yes.
really, I think for all islanders, that's generally the sense. You can take a Chamorro or a Cominian or a Micronesian out of the islands, but you cannot take the islands out of that person.
Yes. I can't wait to be back this summer. So maybe ask a couple more questions. Were there any specific policies or, initiatives during your presidency that were directly influenced by Palauan traditions or cultural values? If there's one in specific that you'd like to talk about, you're more than free to do so.
Well, I mentioned already, but I think the most important policy was the PNMS, the Palau National Marine Sanctuary.
Yes.
That's really something that has distinguishes Palau as doing more than our share of the 30% target that the UN is trying to ask the world to conserve at least 30% of their territorial waters. But Palau has gone beyond 30% and actually has set a benchmark of 80% of our territorial waters. So it's not a small thing. I continue to endorse, of course, the challenge of having a constitutional government that recognizes the chief system and the cultural way of our life that revolves around respect versus a democratic form of government that also encourages individual aspirations, achievements, and freedom. Freedom. So how do you keep those two going side by side? Again, has to do with a lot of respect. But I do also believe that they can complement each other. A good society is also a law and order society, called for by our legal system and also called for by our traditional system.
Yes.
Because every village, the chiefs also help to maintain law and order and respect and what we call a volunteer work or community work. So it's not always about money that the government has to give the people to the citizens of the community. With their chiefs can also clear the mangrove area, clear the coastal area, clear the community parks. And how do you complement this type of social order is also very challenging, but a very doable and necessary way. I want to bring up especially a situation right now. In Palau, we're facing also a drug problem, but we know that our law enforcement cannot do it alone. We have to also ask the village elders, the village chiefs, to also help do a bull about no loitering, no gathering, no using public places to party or kind of lessen down the attraction for people to congregate and maybe spread around the use of drugs. So these are the kinds of things that can be done to complement one another and necessary, needed to be so. We have what we call protected areas that are for clam hatcheries, for certain species of protected fish. 2 marine law officers cannot patrol those areas.
Yes.
But if the whole community under a bull system would come and said, yes, that's a bull area, a prohibited area, then the whole village becomes the marine law officers and we say, don't go there, that's prohibited area or whatever. All of these things can truly be executed to complement one another and very, very much needed in these modern days.
So I want to ask, our listeners might not know what exactly bull is. Could you just briefly elaborate or just give a brief definition of what it is in terms of the curfew and how it works?
So bull literally means prohibition. You're prohibited from taking certain species or prohibited from going to a designated area that is no fishing zone. That can be a bull also. If it's on land, they can say a bull prohibition against taking betel nuts or taking fruit dove, I think, are national birds.
Mm-hmm.
So it can, basically, it's a prohibition degree
Yes.
established by traditional system that when it's declared, we do actually have an announcement, and people in the village are expected to know about it and to enforce it, and the village chief can fine a violator.
Yes.
Today, it's not just about Palauan money, but it can also be American money, or you could be asked to do volunteer work. You don't get paid for the work you do, but you clean certain areas. So the bull is really a traditional mechanism to ensure that there's protection of certain things. It has worked in early years of our society and continues to be employed today.
Yes.
I mentioned drugs. So one of the degree by bull or prohibition is that people are not allowed to travel to certain states now after midnight if you don't have a purpose of entering that village. So we call that a bull also. And children under 15 are not allowed to roam the streets unless they have a good purpose of doing that. So that's part of the bull. So it can be applied in different ways, in different situations, but we find that it does complement our law and order efforts to keep our communities safe.
Thank you. So just to finish off with a final question, my final question is there anything you would like to tell the global community to help them better understand like Palau's cultural, political, social environment? Anything at all?
Well, my one request for all island communities and the global community is to always consider is that the livelihoods of people, especially island communities like Palau and many throughout the Pacific, we're small communities that are now already experiencing or living the negative impacts of climate change, sea level rise, coral bleaching, unpredictable weather patterns that are now typhoons and whatever that are affecting our communities. Everything under the sky is, we are feeling it on the front line. And so the global community really needs to do the right thing, the moral thing to do, and that is to lessen what it is that contributes to global warming and climate change. The other thing is there's really three things that we expect and ask for from big countries or big brothers that have the resources that can do what they need to do in terms of defense and security matters in their interest. All we ask are those three things of 1, respect, 2, respect, and 3, respect. We're small, but we also want to be a partner in situations that can be a win-win situation for the big countries and the small countries. That's all we ask them, is treat us with respect, because we always treat you with respect. And what is good for you is also good for us, and what is good for us is good for you. What is bad for us at this time could definitely have a trickling down effect to you if we don't take the necessary solutions right now. So that's, in a nutshell, is my plea, and my always the plea of the island nations to the big nations.
Yes.
Truly partners.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, our time here in the studio is wrapping up, and I would like to take this time to once again say thank you very much to Palau's former president, Tommy Remengesau Jr., for joining us on this episode of the Oceanic Palau. It was an honor to be here and not only have this discussion with you, but furthermore, gain such, valuable insight from one of Palau's leaders. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Oceanic Podcast. We would like to thank our funder, the Green Initiative Fund at UC Berkeley, as well as the Ethnic Studies Changemaker Studio for helping us record this podcast. This podcast was made possible by research and planning by CPISC co-founders Sophia Perez, Kieran Rudge, and Nate Tilton, as well as CPISC members Viv Kammerer and Georgia Cutter. CPISC's work also deeply benefits from the support of Angel Halafihi at the Pacific Islander Initiative and Dr. Clancy Wilmot in the Geography Department. We hope to see you again soon in the next episode, and we thank you for listening. So long!